Nicholas, stop. You ran over without a word. You ran over and picked him up. Hey, come back here, young man. Yeah, I mean, so one thing that I do when my kids are not doing what they're supposed to do is I give them a choice of something. So if, let's say, my son is watching TV and it's time for dinner. Okay, he's watching TV, it's time for dinner. And of course he doesn't want to get dinner, he wants to watch TV. So I'll say, Brody, it's dinner time, and he'll say, I want to keep watching TV, and I'll say, Brody, I said it's dinner time. Do you want to turn off the TV or do you want me to turn off the TV? I give him that choice. And, sometimes he'll say, I'll turn off the TV, and he'll turn it off. And other times he won't say anything. I'll repeat one more time. I'll say, Brody, do you want to turn off the TV or do you want me to turn off the TV? And if he doesn't say anything again, I'll start reaching over and says, okay, I'm going to turn off the TV. And he'll say, no, I'll turn it off. And then he turns it off. And then we have dinner. So that's like one thing that I do with my kid. Sometimes I'll say, Brody, do you want to watch TV for 1 minute more or 3 minutes more? Do you want to watch TV for 2 more minutes or 3 more minutes? And he'll answer accordingly. And then after that, it's time to watch TV. So kind of a technique. Yes, you may think of it like that's a false choice, but it makes it easier than me just going up and turning it off without even asking him, how do you want to do this? Do you want to do it this way or that way? And you can't say neither, because if you say neither, then I'm just going to pick the one between one of those two and be done with it. But I don't think this technique is here. Nicholas, stop. You ran over without a word. You ran over and picked him up. I don't think I would pick him up. I would actually, if it were me, I would say, hey, Nicholas, I would start off being reasonable and nice, because I'm not his parent. I would start off being a bit more reasonable and nice and be like, hey, Nicholas, we're all over here. Or, hey, Nicholas, I want to make sure I can watch you so you don't, nothing bad happens to you. They may listen to me, they may not listen to me. So I'm using that just as an initial way to gauge, how much are they taking me seriously? Am I the kind of person they're just going to brush off? Or are they going to actually, be motivated to listen to me because I'm because I'm not their parents? Would they be more willing to listen to me because I'm not their parents? Would they be more willing to me because I'm a friend of their, brother, stuff like that. Just kind of gauge, and based on the response, then I can decide how to go from there. So I probably would not put my hands on him. That feels awkward for me to just, even if I had known them for a while. I don't know if I know them well enough, Nicholas well enough, to just go over and just grab him and pick him up. Hey, come back here, young man. Nicholas, stop. I'll just run over it depends. I wouldn't run over without a word. I would at least run over and then say something. Nicholas, stop. Pick him up. I don't like any of these. None of these was what I would do at all. Hey, come back here, young man. Hey, come back here, young man. Nicholas, stop. You ran over and picked him up. You ran over without a what? Let me see what happens when I do this one. You were thankful for your longer legs since the kid was quick. You closed the gap between the two of you and stood in front of him. He didn't look up until he bumped right into your legs. Nicholas snickered. He tried to dash around you, so you had to shift to the left to block his progress. He then went right and you speedily sidestepped. Soon you both were going back and forth as though you were actually playing a game of soccer, and Nicholas is trying to get past you to score. The soccer ball tumbled from his arms. Then you kicked the ball back to him and suggested playing. Oh, hey, Nicholas, you're hanging out with me just like Derek does, and you were just totally overwhelmed. Then you kicked the ball back to him and suggested playing. Let's play. I'm gonna get it. He squealed at the idea. Alright, there we go. He chased the ball, determined to beat you to it, and wound up to kick. That's called misdirection. Misdirection. A very good strategy as well. And wound up to kick. He overshot the angle of his foot and the ball bounced off awkwardly. Then you were the one after the ball. It didn't go that far. You let Nicholas get it again so he could continue to gradually kick the ball across the field. He sent some strands of grass into the air along with the ball on his second go. Darn, I'm gonna get you, Nicholas cackled while bumping the ball along. No, I'm gonna win. When you next got close to the soccer ball, he switched strategies. Nicholas grabbed it in his hand so he could simply run for it. That's not how soccer works. It's mine. You laughed off his blatant rule breaking and started running around after Nicholas directly. The only times your gaze strayed from the little Suarez was when you blinked or sent the occasional glance George's way. George continued to enjoy his time at the park without any need for assistance, so you spent most of your energy on the mischief maker. And after smoothing out the initial bump in the afternoon, things evened out. At least things were fine until the trial known as lunch arrived. It started with the reappearance of Derek. His presence sent Nicholas into hyperdrive. He bounced on the tips of his toes and waved both his hands frantically. Derek's back! He tackled his older brother and latched on Derek's left leg. George, like half of the entire park, noticed the shout. He jogged over to see if any important updates were happening without him. Derek winked. Hey bros.
What's up?
Hi Hark, I hope you're doing alright. As he spoke, he let his bag drop to the ground. He crouched over it and scrounged up the packed lunches. It's all good. Oh yeah, it's just great. I don't know how you do this all the time. You nodded. I'm having fun. You shrugged. I'll say, it's all good. You gave a thumbs up and Derek grinned. Very impressed. Yeah, it looks that great. Great job. Lickus didn't attack me from behind even once. Derek sat aside 3 paper bags in the grass, one in front of Nicholas, another next to George, and the third went to you. Derek kept the 4th lunch inside his backpack. He only pulled a water bottle out from it and closed the bag back up. Okay, Nicholas, you've got to eat now with Hark and George. Nicholas clenched Derek's jeans more desperately as he whined. You're not gonna eat with me? This child is definitely attached to his brother. I don't blame him. I want to be attached to Derek too, so I don't blame him. Derek scratched the back of his head and gave a longing glance back where he'd been practicing. Do you mind, Hark? I was hoping I'd have more time to practice. He bit his lip, hope clear in his face. He had confidence that you could handle lunch alone. You should really eat lunch too. I'll handle it. Okay. Sure, good luck with your practice. You gave him an okay sign. I'll say you should really eat lunch too. Yeah, I'll call him on that. It'll be fine, I promise. Nicholas's whimpering never stopped being high-pitched background noise. Derek ruffled his hair. Hey, check this out. He picked up Nicholas's soccer ball and placed it on top of his own head. Nicholas' jaw dropped theatrically as Derek fully stood up while keeping it balanced. Wow! Nicholas cheered and jumped up and down, still holding on Derek's leg. Derek bent his knees and then popped up fast enough to launch the ball in the air. He caught it on his head again. Ha! Nicholas let go of his brother to clap. Derek grinned at Nicholas, but his gaze flicked to you for a second. The show was over. Derek inclined his head and let the soccer ball drop into his hands. He held it out to Nicholas. Make sure to eat a good lunch, okay? Then you can back to practicing. Okay. Nicholas spoke into the soccer ball he had cuddled to his face. He'd been starstruck enough that he couldn't disagree with anything his biggest brother said. Derek waved at you and George before heading off to where he'd left his soccer ball, carrying only the water bottle with him. George promptly took a seat in the grass by the lunch bags. Nicholas put the soccer ball in his head. It immediately rolled off. He just tried again. You reached over the lunches. Each bag had a clearly written name in the black marker ink. George collected his bag. You had yours, and you attempted to give the last one to its proper owner. But Nicholas showed zero interest in his bag. You imagined he would have been more interested in Derek's lunch bag, even though they probably had the same meals. George scoffed, knowing his brother was going to be difficult again. He took a sandwich from his bag. From the looks alone, you guessed it was sliced deli turkey, a pale-colored cheese, and some veggies. With Nicholas clearly busy, you took his sandwich out for him. The sandwich was ham and some sort of orangey cheese, cheddar almost entirely. You offered the food directly to Nicholas, and he still didn't bite. He wanted to play. How about I help you eat while you practice? Nicholas, if you want to play, then you have to eat. If you eat, I'll hold the ball on your head for you. Deal? If you eat, I'll hold the ball on your head for you. Deal? Panicked, you sent an SOS glance to George. Yeah, like, this is actually a pretty decent technique. Panicked, you sent an SOS glance to George. If you eat, I'll hold the ball in your head for you. Deal? Nicholas chewed on the inside of his cheek while he carefully contemplated your suggestion. Then the focused look melted to a bright smile. All right. See? There you go. Bingo. He gave you a determined nod when he was ready to switch. Your fingers found out as you reached for the ball and pressed it down into his messy mop of hair. Nicholas cautiously released the ball and you kept it firmly in place. He giggled ecstatically and that he finally found a way to keep the ball up without using his hands. It just took another person to do it. He retrieved his sandwich and immediately stuffed a big bite into his cheeks. Chuckling, he took a glance over at what George was doing. Luckily, he didn't need a hand like his brother. He was already enjoying his packed lunch, and you decided not to squander the opportunity. You retrieved your own sandwich with your free hand and dug in. It was definitely an interesting way to enjoy a meal break. Finishing the last corner of your square-shaped meal, you wondered if Mrs. Suarez had talked to one of your moms beforehand about lunch. The sandwich was made how you would have had it at home. She was either prepared or very lucky, but considering that what her oldest son was like, you were guessing luck had nothing to do with it. Along with the sandwiches, there were also bags of carrots, celery, and a few cookies. Between the three of you, it wasn't long before all the snacks were gone. With nothing left to nibble on, Nicholas yawned and curled up in the grass, cuddling the soccer ball against his chest. George stood up, watching his little brother fall asleep. Once he was certain that Nicholas was down for the count, he started cleaning up the trash. You admired the maturity he showed for his age. It wasn't just Derek who had that streak after all. You helped gather the trash while musing about the Suarez brothers. Derek was the oldest and who his parents relied on, while Nicholas was the baby of the family, and for a little kid, he was a force to be reckoned with. George is the one stuck in the middle. Seriously, thank you for helping me with this. Thanks for being such a good kid to babysit. Hey, I saw your football throws earlier. They were really good. I like getting the chance to spend time together. You gave him an encouraging smile. Hey, I saw your football throws earlier. You were really good. George spun around on his heel. He seemed stunned, like he wasn't sure if he imagined your compliment or not. In a couple years, you could totally get on a junior football team. Hugh nodded and a blush grew on his face until it reached his ears. Okay. He hurriedly went back to what he was doing before. George was embarrassed, but you also noticed there was a bounce in his step that wasn't there before. Oh. I'm doing really well with both these kids. That's cool. I was actually expecting Nicholas to be harder, honestly. Like, I expected him to fuss a little bit more, to fight with me a little bit more. So I was actually pleasantly surprised by how complacent he has been so far. The park suddenly felt empty with Nicholas asleep. He took up a lot of space despite his tiny size. Chuckling to yourself, you found a comfortable spot in the grass and scanned the area for Derek. You eventually caught sight of him running in the distance. Even from here you could tell that Derek was persistent about his practice. He went back and forth, repeating the same set of moves, reassessing and refining his form every time. Though it wasn't long before he paused to wipe his brow with his black wristband, Derek happened to glance your way at the moment and realized that he had an audience of one. He gave a huge wave with both hands that required he cross both his arms over his head, and before you knew it, Derek's strides were bringing him back over to you and his brothers. Phew! That's it. I'm gonna be done with practice. I'm back. Welcome back. So you're ready to go pro now? I'm not that good. Yet. Derek shook his head incredulously. The confidence in your voice had his cheeks flushing, just as much as the exercise. Thanks for watching George and Nicholas. I didn't mean for it to be so long. Yeah, hey, I finally got to be the big sibling. I think I feel like an old, tired parent now. It's okay, I'm happy I could help you out. You owe me one. You nodded promptly. If I was that, I'd say, hey, I finally get to be the big sibling. It was cool. The nonchalant way you put it like it was a role to easily step in and out of it had Derek laughing hard. As he collected himself, he rubbed the back of his neck. And I'm glad I could lend you that for a while. Next, he shifted his attention over to his brothers. George gave a little wave. He'd been waiting patiently for his big brother to wrap up his conversation with you. We're going back. George simply got up, not needing any more guidance, while Derek kneeled in the grass to nudge Nicholas out of dreamland. A single eye cracked open at first, and then they both popped wide open and when he realized who was with him. Derek! Nicholas sprang off the ground, wrapping his arms around his big brother like a vice grip and nuzzled into his chest. Derek gave Nicholas's head a single pat.
Let's go.
Practice was good today. Let's go home.
Let's go home.
Let's go home. Nicholas's hushed voice echoing his brother's put a warm smile on your face. Stretching your arms high overhead, you surveyed the area to make sure that nothing was being left behind. You were all clear, and it felt good to have another solo round of babysitting successfully under your belt. With your leadership and no one got lost, injured, swallowed something they shouldn't have, or even declared that they hated you for eternity. So in your book, you'd say it went fairly well. The 15-minute walk back from the park passed by pleasantly. The late afternoon sun fell behind you, and your shadow soon stretched across the sidewalk. You wiggled your fingers and then exaggerated your hand's movement in order to watch the shadow change. Meanwhile, next to you, Derek was finally eating his lunch. Although he had to eat his sandwich with the hand Nicholas wasn't clasping tightly on. George entertained himself with the football he still carried. He periodically tossed it up in the air and caught it again. You could easily imagine how often the three of them had made this trip before, with only the three of them. But you didn't feel out of place strolling alongside the group. It felt natural. Awesome. Means I can marry into this family? Naturally. Beaming, you found your gaze settling on Derek again. You knew without a doubt that the way you felt was because of him. He was so good at making you feel welcome. In time, you made it safely back and Derek dropped his bag on the floor with a quiet sigh of relief. Any hope he had to take things easy for a second immediately evaporated.
We're going to the pool as soon as we come back.
Nicholas's joy was palpable, parroting back Derek's promise from earlier in the day. As the words dawned on him, Derek closed his eyes and breathed deeply. Yup, we are. Get ready. And that was all the approval Nicholas and George needed. They both dashed off to their shared bedroom to get changed. Derek sluggishly opened his eyes, but his tiredness softened when he looked at you.
It's okay.
Practice is done. If you want to stay up here until your moms can come get you, that's cool. Derek gave a partial shrug and then ran a hand through his hair, shyly. I'm sure that melted my biscuits. We don't have to go swimming again, but I want to hang out with you. I've been having fun. I'm not mad about being here. What? You'd promise we'd get to the pool again. I would definitely not say that. I'm not going to let you be outnumbered by George and Nicholas. I don't want to be in here by myself. You shook your head at the terrible idea of staying behind, but I want to hang out with you. The tips from his ears burned red at your declaration, but he didn't turn away from you. He spoke cheerfully instead. Thanks. Me too, Hark. It wasn't much longer before the younger kids came running out to rejoin you and Derek. They both wore their neon-colored swimsuits and had towels wrapped around their shoulders. Oh my gosh, are those dinosaur swimming trunks? That is so cute on Nicholas. Those little dinosaur swimming trunks. And I really like George's too. I like the rainbowish. Yeah, it's basically like a rainbow gradient going down his shorts. I like that. Nice job. You even remembered your floaty vest, Nicholas. And I love the yellow, purple, and blue. Your brothers are styling. They're styling, Derek. I approve. Derek kneeled down to make sure the safety device was properly secured. Nicholas stood tall with his chest out proudly. He didn't fear the scrutinization. I did the straps for him. Perfect, thanks. George brightened just as his younger brother had. Standing back up, Derek shifted his attention to you. Same quick change strategy from earlier? Yeah. You darted off to get changed first. Derek nodded seriously when you returned to take over for him. He emerged a couple of minutes later and diligently went over to the counter to write something down. Curious, you inched closer. Just gotta leave a note so Dad knows where we are, then we can go. He's so responsible, hence the name of this moment. Oh, sounds good. Everything was squared away as Derek was always sure to do, and the four of you marched right back out the apartment for another excursion. By the time the distinct smell of chlorine tickled your nose, the sun had fallen low in the sky. You circled around some nearby lounge chairs and deemed them capable of keeping your things safe. Inspecting the gleaming water, you noticed that George and Nicholas hadn't moved towards the pool yet. Both the little boys were watching Derek like hawks. You'd picked up enough this afternoon to know it was because George didn't want to do anything without permission and Nicholas didn't want to do anything Derek wasn't doing.
I'm on it.
Here I go. And Derek himself knew it too. He didn't keep them waiting. Derek offered his brothers an encouraging wave and strode over to the pool. You followed him into the water. You ran to beat him in. You remained nice and dry on solid land. Yeah. You happily observed Derek's pause at the pool's edge. He prepared himself with focus, adding a little suspense for his brothers, and dove in. The other Suarez sons followed. George jumped in without any hesitation, but Nicholas sped right to the edge, only to come to an abrupt stop. His toes curled around the edge of the pool, and his lips were pressed into a tight frown. Nicholas tipped his head and stared down at the water, clutching his hands together. He was scared to jump. Nicholas would rather the pool come the rest of the way to him, but it wasn't being a good sport. That's cute. Derek and George popped out of the water with matching wide grins and droplets clinging to the tips of their hair. Neither were surprised that they were missing their baby brother. All right. Woohoo! That was awesome. Nicholas's cry for help came out in a tiny, impatient squeak. He began wiggling in place. Derek chuckled and swam over to a shallower spot. The 6-year-old followed closely, toddling around along the edge. When his feet touched the pool's solid bottom, Derek stood up. He kindly held his arms out towards his brother.
This is gonna be
Come
great.
on, Nico, the water's fine. Trusting him completely, Nicholas let go of his fear. He took a step over the side and walked into his favorite person's hold. Derek embraced Nicholas as he dropped against his chest. Then Derek slowly lowered him closer to the water before he completely let his little brother go. Nicholas bobbed under with a small splash and broke out again in an instant like a buoy. He was bursting at the seams with excitement. Whoa! Nicholas made the most of his new floating freedom by dog paddling around the shallow end. Checking on George, you noticed that he was sticking to the center of the pool. He bounced himself from the floor to the surface for air and then pushed back down to do it all over again. He leapt all around in a circle. Derek rested an arm across the pool's edge and took a moment to watch his brothers too. You stepped over to where Derek had himself situated and sat down on the tile closest to him. Crossing your legs, you felt a cooling breeze wafting off the water. It was nice, but your skin still bristled with goosebumps. You knew the temperature change signaled that the day was almost over, which is another reason why I didn't want to go into the pool, because of the change in temperature. Derek kept his main focus on his family, though he spared a moment to tilt his head in your direction. A few beads of water trailed from his hairline down the side of his jaw. Babysitting went as well as you thought, huh? Even better, probably. They were both really good. Neither of them bit me or anything. Perfect.
Honestly...
My brothers are fun. Some of the time. He chuckled at his own joke and ran a damp hand down his face to try getting at least some of the water off. The final rays of sunlight cast a warm glow on his skin, and the pool sparkled as he finally turned his attention directly towards you. You felt toastier all of a sudden, like someone had pulled the sun back up to the center of the sky. Derek's mouth turned into his usual wonderful smile. I don't know what I'd do without them. I think they're great. You sound like a proud dad. Well, George is good, but Nicholas is trouble with a capital T. I think Nicholas is way cuter than all the other Suarez's. You nodded. You shrugged. I think you sound like a proud dad. He smirked at your teasing, mostly because I want to have kids. And if I definitely see Derek as wanting to have kids too. He likes taking care of younger people. He smirked at your teasing, but he quickly lost his force as his cheeks grew pink. Derek hid his face in his hands. I don't even want to think about being a real parent right now. Being the oldest kid is enough for me. I wanted to be a parent pretty early on. Like in elementary school, I knew I wanted to be a dad. Shaking his head, he kept his brothers in his sight. The affection returned to his expression. I'm proud of them, though. George and Nicholas remained engrossed with their own water adventures, while you and Derek kept track of them. You were in mid-conversation when the sound of footsteps echoed off the walls surrounding the pool. Derek shot an arm out of the water and waved at the newcomer. Dad!
Good evening.
Good evening. Dad! Dad? All the Suarez boys eagerly paddled over to the end of the pool where their father stood. They moved together in the water with their heads beside each other and their legs kicked out behind them like a pile of seal pups.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Thank you.
Thank you, George. Mr. Suarez's voice was sweet as he observed his children's happy faces. Eventually he spotted you as well, and he tucked his fingers into the edge of his vest in vigor. Oh, this is a pool party today. You know, a party should have the proper food. Let's order pizza for dinner tonight. Yeah. Laughing with excitement, Nicholas started smacking the palms of his hands against the water surface, making several bursting splashes. George flicked the droplets from the tips of his finger at Nicholas in retaliation. Chuckling over the scene, Mr. Suarez brought a hand up and held into his chin. He scratched at his beard with his thumb. Half cheese, half pepperoni for the first, correct? Yes. Pepperoni! Nicholas threw both his arms in the air as he cheered. Mr. Suarez nodded, pleased his littlest one still had predictable tastes.
Wonderful.
Okay, and meat and veggie supreme for Irene and I on the second. He settled his gaze on Derek and you for the final decision. Suggestions for what the final half should be? Hark, you pick. You tapped a finger against your knee as you thought about it. I do like a lot on my pizza. I like pepperoni pizza. I like cheese pizza just fine. I prefer pepperoni, but I like cheese, but I like other stuff on it. More cheese, more pepperoni, more supreme, all veggies, all meat, barbecue chicken is where it's at. Hawaiian. Could I get something other than pizza? That would be me, actually. It doesn't matter to me. You pick. Derek, what do you normally get? You left it all up to Derek. I love barbecue chicken pizza, but I like to be different too. Could I get something other than pizza? Oh yeah, you can. The place all says salads, and we have stuff in the fridge too. There's some leftover chili with beans, peppers, and some other veggies. Any of that work? Actually, I do want to pick the pizza. I'd be like, because I was thinking if they had wings, I'd be all over the wings. I like chili, and I do like salad, but The barbecue chicken pizza is what I want. Actually, I do want to pick the pizza. Sure. Let's do barbecue chicken. Derek gave you a big thumbs up for that. So, in full, half cheese and half pepperoni, half supreme, and half barbecue chicken. Oh yeah, love it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you, children. I'll put the order in now. I'll come back to let you know when it's ready, but until then, continue to play. Thanks, Dad. Bye. Thanks, Dad. Bye, I'll be waiting. Mr. Suarez closed the pool gate behind him, leaving you kids to your fun. You jumped into the water, you climbed down into the pool, you dipped your feet in the water, you sat on the closest chair to the pool and watched. No, I'll climb into the pool this time, not jump. You climbed down into the pool. Knowing it wouldn't be long before dinner, you decided it was time to join the brothers in the pool. You carefully lowered yourself in and had yourself floating on your back in no time. In Mr. Suarez's absence, Derek took charge again. Alright, you heard it, Dad's ordering pizza, so it'll be here in like 30 minutes. So think fast, what's the last thing you want to do before we have to leave the pool? How about we play a game like Marco Polo? Nicholas furrowed his brow, thinking as hard as he could. He scrunched his face together in frustration when nothing came to mind. Meanwhile, George put a hand to his chin and tilted his head to the side. He stared up and off into space as he considered the question. You left it open for the younger kids to decide. While they were distracted, you made the first strike in a splash fight. Nah, I wouldn't do that. I'll let the younger kids decide. I do not like getting into splash anything fights. Narrowing your gaze, you wondered who would speak first. You crossed your arms. I would have suggested like some sort of pool game, other than splash. But you crossed your arms and sat tight. The boys would have to come up with their own answers. We could make a whirlpool. Yeah. Nicholas's pupils grew huge with anticipation. Yeah. Nicholas giggled as Derek hooked his fingers around the vest straps. Derek started moving forward, dragging his little brother along for the ride. George pumped his arms and excitedly jogged against the resistance of the water. You darted to their little conga line to get the water going even faster. Around and around you all went, from corner to corner of the shallow end. It wasn't long before there was enough motion going to start a current. I had never actually done this before. That sounds fun. Nicholas was still loudly squealing when Derek let him go so he could float along in the moving water. Like a man on a mission, George hopped out of the pool and barreled into the nearby pool shed. He reemerged with the pool noodle victoriously held in his fist. George jumped back into the pool with it between his legs. He surfaced and drifted along, riding the pool noodle like a cowboy riding a horse off into the sunset. That's cool. You and Derek continued to push the water by running in circles to stop the whirlpool dying out. Each time Derek lapped one of his brothers in the loop, he gave them a high five. The four of you thoroughly enjoyed your time at the pool. It flew by so fast that you were surprised when you spotted Mr. Suarez cruising down to the water's edge once more. Dinner's here, and even better, Mom's home. Yay! The youngest Suarez threw his wet confetti into the air. Even his dad wasn't safe from it. Mr. Wet confetti, I love that. Mr. Suarez took it in stride and wiped his glasses against his vest. Derek was out of breath, but he beamed. Let's go get some food. Yeah, that's why I'm here. Mr. Suarez led the way to the apartment, and the four of you kids marched with an eager spring in your steps. Despite being wrapped in towels, you dripped water the whole way there. The savory smell of hot cheese and garlic crust was there to greet you when you arrived at the door. You could hear the musical words of Mrs. Suarez, too.
Welcome.
Welcome home. Hi, Mom. Hi, Mom. Feeling a bit awkward and out of place, you gave a tiny wave. Mrs. Suarez didn't miss it, and her voice softened as she spoke to you first. Hello, Hark. I hope you had fun today. I did. We had lots of fun.
That's great.
Very good. Mrs. Suarez then went over to the kitchen where the food was set on the counter. She popped the boxes open and delightedly glanced over at her husband. This was such a good idea. Thank you. Mr. Suarez dipped his head into a tiny bow. He followed by gesturing a hand towards the food.
Well then.
Come get dinner. Youngest to oldest order. Despite the order given, it was no surprise that George was the one who moved first. You figured Nicholas would wait for Derek even if he didn't have to. George tore off a pizza towel from the roll and used it to grab a slice of plain cheese pizza. He hot-footed it back over to the entryway, standing there so he wouldn't bring water any further into the apartment. You can go next, Hark. It'll be easier that way. The food smelled even better up close. You grabbed a slice of cheese. You grabbed a slice of pepperoni. You grabbed a slice of supreme. I'm grabbing my barbecue chicken. That's what I ordered. You hurried back to the entryway with your dinner. Derek went next, tiptoeing over with Nicholas at his heels. He grabbed a slice of pepperoni and passed it to Nicholas. Derek then grabbed a slice of barbecue chicken for himself. Heck yeah. He knows. But instead of going to the entryway, he went to an open space on the floor.